they work with each other. The first is, how do you change and transform yourself as a leader, the individual, the personal transformation. The second is, how do you change your mindset and the purpose of your organization based on your own transformation. And the third aspect is to assess where you are in the world and how you adjust and transform your plan as an organization and as a leadership team. We will be taking a snapshot of those three, and then we're going to be focusing on the external transformation in terms of how it affects the brand in this current world of disruption and chaos. And this whole investigation is really an intensive, 4 or 5 capacity building training program, which today in our 2 hours is really going to just give you a snapshot. So let's look at the next slide, please. So transforming is the first stage, who you are. So I'd like to tell you a story. About a year ago, I was invited by Mr. Adel to come to Oman, and before I was there, I went on a stop to Lebanon, and I participated with a very special program in the United States called Legacy International, and they do entrepreneurial training and civil service training for young people throughout the world for the last 40 years. And I did some training with some really inspired entrepreneurs, and they had a real commitment to change the world. And although the society was very corrupt and was very challenging for them, and I understand the struggles they faced, and was trying to understand where they came from and what their perspective was and how they had adapted. And as I reflected on that, I went to Oman and worked with Mr. Adel on a series of executive workshops at the Royal Court. And we taught a master class, and the master class was overseen by a very visionary leader on the training program. And his approach to who he was and the lens he looked through was the lens of trust. And he said trust guided every relationship in the organization, and that was the way he tried to train his operations team, to look through trust as a vehicle. So I sat back and thought about that for a while, and as I was getting on the plane coming back to the United States, I reflected on how I was trained as a PhD and an MBA out of Northwestern's Kellogg School, one of the best in the world, and how I've worked with people at Manchester Business School and INSEAD and on 5 different continents. And most of the people that I work with have either had entrepreneurial training or were trained through business schools or executive courses. But those executive courses had something in common. They had a mindset. In the marketing sense, they looked at the 4 P's of marketing: price, place, promotion, and product. And the concept of brand was determined by who controlled it. We controlled the brand, the company. We controlled the marketing. We designed it. And we were there to generate a profit or to benefit our company. This was the traditional brand. This was traditionally the way we looked at things. And then I realized that this mindset was the way we conducted our business and had results. And look at the results. We talked about before that transformation failed in 70% of corporations and nonprofits on a global basis. That's an incredible number, and how much money was wasted on efforts that don't work. Why don't we look at what's happening in our world today? We're facing incredible climate change. We're having huge economic inequalities. We're having starvation happening. Over 100 million people are supposed to be starving, projected to starve by Christmas, by the holiday season. We have a global pandemic, which was mishandled by many different countries. And then we have misalignment of values. Where does that come from? Well, to me, these are the signs of the solutions from the business world and the other institutions which are really not working. And so we really need to reflect on the kinds of transformation that we need to do within ourselves and our organization to realign ourselves, to see where we need to go. And we need to take some responsibility. So our talk today and our future talks is about trying to address this transformation process in a way that we will not just be observers to it, but we will help to drive it. So I want to just think about who we are. The leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of this transformation movement, have to be passionate about their business, about what they're delivering to their stakeholders. They have to refocus on what's important to them and to the people that they're serving, their core values. Clearly, they need to develop their digital competencies because digital runs the world. It's pervasive right now. And then they need to really focus on who they are and what they bring to any decision, their biases, their resistances, their programmed ways of thinking. And the last thing is they have to be truly committed and anchored on the idea of transformation, and that they want to drive the change instead of being a passive recipient and then being forced to change. So we're looking at the transformation of the leader in a way that they will become, we call it a catalyzer of change. Next slide. So when we're talking about transformation, there's usually 3 different elements of that process: why you're transforming, how you're transforming, and what you're transforming to. So the why is all about purpose, cause, belief. It's the sort of single anchoring force in our life as a company. Few companies, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and nonprofits really focus on what their purpose is and use that purpose as an anchor and as a messaging tool, both in terms of communication and in terms of inspiring their stakeholders and keeping them consistently on the path of fulfilling that mission or that purpose. And then how is that done? How is that done is that specific actions and the guiding principles and the values which translate that purpose into reality. And the last thing is the consistency of the what. Does the what, or what you actually produce, the product, the service, the educational format, is it consistent with both your purpose and your why and your how? So next slide, please. So this goes back to some very famous work by a management consultant called Simon Sinek, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Look at the why as being the center of this golden circle. The how is being the next level, and the what is being the output. Next slide, please. So he made a very interesting point in discussing. He says, people don't buy what you do, they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So his contention, and he's been speaking globally, is to focus on the why. So let's next slide, please. So what we call that is the transformative why. So if we look at a company like Apple, and Apple is in the computer business. So if we look at one of their competitors, Dell or HP, you know, people promote the features of the product. You know, that we make great computers, we have great designs, we're simple and user-friendly to use, we have a very cheap price, it's very competitive, we get a lot of features, we have a nice screen, come buy us. Apple has taken traditionally a very, very different approach, beginning with the passion of Steve Jobs. You know, they begin with their why. Everything we do is a challenge to the status quo. We want to think differently. We want you to be a catalyzer of change. If you use our product, that's who you're going to be. You're going to be communicating that why. How do we do it? We do it with a passion for design, for crafting the best product for your use, for very high performance and low downtime. And what do? Well, we do a lot of things. We have watches, we sell computers, we do mobile devices, but all of them are anchored in the why. When you think of Apple, when I think of Apple, I think of the why. In the case of Jahan, when I think of Jahan, I would think of ethical, fairness, community-related craft items, which are being related to our target market. So we're going to be trying to really focus on that why. Next slide, please. And that's the anchor. For those who are interested, I can share with them a canvas which I've developed and used, and it's a three-part canvas which looks at the personal characteristics of yourself and the leaders, and then it combines those with the company characteristics, and then it develops a joint process of developing the aggregation of what we personally believe on our values, what we believe our company values are, and how we why of that purpose into something more powerful, and that will underlie all of what we do and how we do it. Next slide, please. So I want to give you an example of a company, a Subaru company, who for the last 10 years has been promoting the Subaru as a love car. Their purpose was to communicate love and family. Show you a couple examples they're doing, and then we'll talk about on the other side. Okay.
It's not easy getting to the easternmost point in the US, but every December 31st, we always make it. The very first people to meet the new year. Get up, you're gonna miss it. We like to think of ourselves as a welcoming party. For the life you live, a car you can love. Love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
So that's one example. So I think we're going to play another one.
Volunteerism. Fundraising. Subaru and our retailers have given over $165 million to charity. We call it our love promise, and it's why you don't even have to own a Subaru to love a Subaru retailer. Subaru, more than a car company.
Okay. So that's fine. That's fine. That's fine, Idle. Thank you. So those two examples are part of a decade-long campaign to associate the purpose of the company is to try to love and promise to love the people that they're with. That company, Subaru, has the highest trust rating of any automobile company in the world for the last, I think, 5 years through J.D. Powers. On the financial side, they have had 13 quarters of increased sales yearly. This last quarter with the pandemic was the first quarter in over 3 to 4 years where they've had any reduction in sales. So the whole idea of marketing and living your purpose and your why has been exemplified by many, many different corporations, and using the love theme as a theme for power, really generating compassion and love has been very successful. As a matter of fact, when I had when we had our first child, we actually bought a Subaru because we wanted something that we believed was safe for the family. So we actually made a $30,000 decision based upon their marketing and their advertising. So that's the first concept, first stage. If we went back to our 6 stages,